Have you ever found yourself trapped in a situation that feels impossible to change? Have you ever wondered if it's truly possible to turn your circumstances around by simply changing how you think? Well, let me tell you, it is possible. You see, reality is not the stubborn, unchangeable force that most people think it is. Reality is simply what you assume it to be. The secret to turning around any situation lies within you, within the power of assumption. Let me take you back to a moment in my own life when this truth became abundantly clear. You see, I wasn't always the person you hear about today. I too faced moments when my circumstances seemed impossible to change. Yet, I discovered the key to transforming them, and today I will share that key with you. The power of assumption. Years ago, I found myself in a place where I had no idea how to change my external reality. I was struggling, frustrated, and unsure of where my life was headed, but I remember the exact moment I stumbled upon the most powerful realization. I had been assuming my circumstances were fixed. It was as though I had accepted my situation as an unchangeable truth. But one day, I dared to ask myself, what if everything I am experiencing right now could be changed by changing how I think? So I decided to test it. I began to assume a new reality. I didn't focus on the how, nor did I try to force anything into being. I simply shifted my inner conversation, my assumption, to the state I wanted to experience. I began to live in the assumption of the wish fulfilled. That is, I lived as though everything I wanted was already here, and something extraordinary happened. My external circumstances started to mirror my inner assumption. Your reality is nothing more than your assumptions projected outward. If you assume something to be true with feeling and belief, it will inevitably manifest in your world. When you consciously choose your assumptions, you are applying the law of assumption. It is an immutable law. What you assume to be true is true, regardless of your current circumstances. Stop assuming you are lacking anything. Assume abundance, assume success, and assume that you have everything you need now. Living from that assumption attracts those very experiences. If you want to change your reality, you must first imagine it. See it in your mind's eye as vividly and clearly as you see the world around you. The more real it feels to you internally, the more likely it is to manifest. It's not enough to assume once or twice. You must persist. You must live from the assumption day in and day out until it becomes natural for you to live from that state. When you engage your emotions, your assumptions gain power. Feel the joy, the relief, the excitement of having your desires already fulfilled. Emotions are the driving force that brings your assumptions to life. The world around you will try to tell you that your situation is impossible to change. Don't listen. Don't look at the evidence. Instead, keep your focus on your assumption of the wish fulfilled and trust that reality will follow. External circumstances are simply the physical manifestation of your inner world. To change your situation, you must first change the way you think and feel about it. When you change the inner, the outer must change as well. Your reality is simply a reflection of your assumptions. This might sound too simple, but it is the truth. You see, everything that you experience in the physical world is born from the unseen world of your assumptions. Whether you are aware of it or not, your assumptions are constantly shaping the reality that you experience. Now, the question is not whether this is true or not, but whether you are conscious of it. Are you aware of what you are assuming, or are you simply walking through life, accepting things as they appear to be? Let me explain. Take a moment and think about something in your life that has remained unchanged for a while. Perhaps it's a financial situation, a relationship, or your health. Now examine the thoughts and beliefs you have had about that situation. What assumptions have you been carrying in your mind? Have you assumed that nothing can change, that it is impossible for things to improve? Or have you assumed that things can get better, that there is a way for you to turn this around? If you truly wish to change any aspect of your life, you must first realize that nothing is fixed. The circumstances that you see before you are simply a manifestation of what you have assumed to be true. Now, these assumptions may have been formed consciously or unconsciously. Most of the time, we form assumptions based on what we have been told, what we have observed, or what we have experienced in the past. We assume that because something has always been a certain way, it will always remain that way. But I tell you, this is the mistake. When you believe that your past is a solid predictor of your future, you are holding on to assumptions that are no longer serving you. The key to transforming any situation is to realize that you are the one who is responsible for the assumptions you hold about the world. And when you change your assumptions, everything changes with it. You are not at the mercy of external forces or circumstances. The external world is a mirror reflecting your inner world, your beliefs, your assumptions, your thoughts. For instance, let's take an example of someone who has been struggling with finances. They've always believed that money is hard to come by, that financial success is reserved for a select few. As a result, their assumptions about money are clouded by thoughts of lack and limitation. These assumptions are then projected outward, and their financial situation remains stagnant. The situation seems unchangeable, almost like it is set in stone. But the truth is, the moment this person changes their assumption about money, the moment they begin to assume that wealth is abundant, that they are deserving of prosperity, and that money flows easily to them, their reality begins to shift. The circumstances may not change instantly, but over time, things begin to align with their new assumption. Opportunities appear, doors open, and what was once a struggle becomes a flow. This is the power of assumption. It works because your thoughts and feelings create a new state of being, a new inner reality, which then must manifest in your external world. The assumption of a desired state is the first step to bringing it into being. Now let's go deeper into this. How do you actually change your assumptions? It begins with recognizing that assumptions are not just passive thoughts. They are deeply held beliefs that have been embedded in your consciousness over time. To change an assumption, you must actively engage with your own consciousness. You must begin to challenge those old limiting beliefs. You must ask yourself, what is it that I truly believe about this situation? For example, if you are in an unhappy relationship, you may have assumed that this is the way relationships are. You may have believed that love is difficult to find, that relationships take a lot of work, or that you are unworthy of true happiness. But when you decide to challenge these assumptions, when you begin to assume that love is easy, that you deserve a loving, joyful relationship, and that love flows freely to you, your entire experience changes. You begin to see new possibilities. You begin to feel different about yourself, and this new self-perception shifts the way others respond to you. You stop accepting the old assumptions of struggle and hardship, and you create space for something entirely new. It's important to understand that your assumptions are not simply thoughts. They are emotional truths that shape your world. The more emotional investment you place into an assumption, the more powerful it becomes. So it's not enough to just think positive thoughts or wish for change. You must feel the truth of your assumption in your heart. You must live as if it is already so. If you assume you are already wealthy, live as though you are wealthy, not in a materialistic sense, but with the confidence and peace that comes from knowing abundance is yours. If you assume that your health is perfect, walk, talk, and act as if you already have the vitality you desire. This is how your assumptions begin to take form. The moment you truly believe that something is true, your perception of reality changes. The world around you starts to reflect the inner truth you have accepted, and what seemed impossible before now becomes a new possibility. Do not underestimate the power of assumptions. They are the seeds of your reality. The more you tend to them, the more they grow. And the beauty of it is that you don't need to wait for external events or people to change. All you need to do is change your inner state, your assumptions about the situation. And the world will have no choice but to reflect that change. So if you want to turn any situation around, start by asking yourself, what am I assuming about this situation? What is the belief I am holding on to? If you find that your assumption is rooted in limitation or lack, you now have the power to change it. Shift your assumption to one of abundance, success, and possibility, and watch as your world begins to align with your new belief. Your reality, after all, is simply a reflection of your assumptions. Change them, and you change everything. The law of assumption never fails. This is not a theory or a possibility. It is an immutable law of the universe. You may not always see it at first, but every time you consciously and deliberately assume something to be true, you activate this law. It's not a question of if it will work, but when it will work. Just like the law of gravity, the law of assumption operates whether you are aware of it or not, whether you believe in it or not. It doesn't require belief to work, but the more you believe in its power, the more quickly and clearly it will work for you. What you assume to be true about your world becomes your world. The moment you assume a certain state or condition, you align your inner world with that state, and eventually the outer world must reflect it. You see, the assumption is not a passive thought or idle wish. It's an active and deliberate choice. It is not enough to simply hope that something will come to pass. The law of assumption requires that you actively live from the assumption that it is already so. Let me explain it in a practical sense. Imagine that you are looking for a new job. Perhaps the thought of finding the right job feels daunting. You might have spent months or even years struggling with this issue, and every time you apply for something, you meet resistance, rejection, or frustration. In such moments, it is easy to assume that you will never find the right job, that the job market is hard, and that your situation is out of your control. This is a perfect example of assuming something that limits your possibilities. Now, if you wish to change your situation, you must stop focusing on the rejection and the challenges. Instead, you must focus on the assumption that the job you desire is already yours. Begin to see yourself in that role, receiving the position that you want. Feel the satisfaction, the confidence, and the joy of knowing that your dream job has already been secured. Imagine what it would feel like to step into that office, to interact with your new colleagues, to take on new responsibilities with ease and excitement. The key here is feeling the reality of the assumption as though it is already true. This feeling is the key to unlocking the power of the law of assumption. The more real it feels to you, the more quickly it will begin to materialize in your outer world. It's not enough to merely say, "I am going to get a job." You must feel that it is already done. And this is where the power lies. Here's why the law of assumption never fails. It works because it aligns your consciousness with the reality you are assuming. Once you make the assumption, you are no longer in a state of wishing or waiting. You have shifted into a state of knowing that what you have assumed is already real. And because your inner world reflects your assumptions, your outer world begins to conform. People, events, and circumstances will align to bring your assumption into fruition. It's important to recognize that the law of assumption is not limited by time or space. It doesn't matter if your desired outcome seems distant or impossible right now. The law is active and available in every moment. The moment you begin to assume that something is true, it becomes true in your experience. For example, let's say you are dealing with a health issue that seems insurmountable. Perhaps you've been struggling with pain, discomfort, or illness for a long time, and every doctor's visit or treatment seems to lead to disappointment. The more you focus on the illness, the more you reinforce the assumption that it is real and permanent. But here's where the law of assumption can transform your reality. Instead of assuming that you are ill or that healing is far away, you shift your assumption. You begin to assume that you are already healed. You feel the vitality, the strength, and the energy of perfect health flowing through you. You begin to live as though you are already well. This doesn't mean ignoring the physical symptoms or dismissing the reality of your situation. It means shifting your focus away from the current condition and living from the assumption that you are already whole. As you do this, the law of assumption starts to work. It aligns your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions with the reality you are assuming. You may find that you make different choices, that your body responds more positively, or that opportunities for healing appear that you hadn't noticed before. In this way, you are not passively waiting for something to change, you are actively changing. your assumptions. And in doing so, you are changing the way your body and the world around you respond. The beauty of the law of assumption is that it is always in effect, even if you don't fully understand how it works. It's not something that you have to make happen. Your assumption is what activates the law. Once you align yourself with a new assumption, the universe, the world, and everything in it will begin to conform to that assumption. And because your assumptions are the key to what you experience, you are the one who holds the power to change your world at any moment. If you want to change the course of your life, the answer is not in trying to change the outside world. The answer is in changing what you assume about the world. Begin by assuming that the desired change is already yours. Assume that success, health, happiness, and fulfillment are your natural states. Live as if they already exist, and the outer world will reflect this assumption. The law of assumption is not a distant, abstract idea. It is a living, breathing law that is active right now. It's up to you to use it, to assume your desired reality, to feel the truth of it, and to allow your assumptions to reshape your world. And as you do, you will find that the law of assumption will never fail you. It works every time, because it is the very foundation upon which the world is built. The moment you step into your assumed reality, you step into the power to create and shape your life as you desire. When you begin to understand the power of your assumptions, it becomes clear that the key to transforming any area of your life lies in shifting your assumptions from a place of lack to one of abundance. So many people live in a state of perpetual scarcity, always focused on what they do not have, on the things they are missing, on the voids in their lives. This focus on lack creates an experience of life that is constantly one step away from fulfillment. But the moment you change your assumptions from those of lack to those of abundance, the entire course of your life shifts. Think about it. If you assume that resources are limited, that there is not enough to go around, that success is reserved for a few, and that you must struggle to obtain what you want, then that assumption will dictate your experience. You will struggle, and the universe will respond by providing you with circumstances that reinforce that very assumption. The more you focus on what you do not have, the more you magnify that lack, and the more it appears to be true in your reality. This is why people often feel as though they are stuck in a cycle of wanting and never receiving. However, the moment you choose to shift your assumption to one of abundance, your experience begins to change. When you assume that there is an infinite supply of what you desire, when you believe that prosperity is always within your reach, you open yourself to a new flow of possibilities. You begin to recognize opportunities that you once overlooked. You see the abundance that has always been present, but which you were previously unable to perceive due to your limiting beliefs. This shift from lack to abundance is not a matter of wishful thinking or positive affirmations alone. It requires a deep internal change in how you relate to the world. It's not enough to simply say, "I have abundance," and expect it to manifest. You must truly feel in every fiber of your being that you are already abundant. You must walk through life as though you are already in possession of everything you need. When you assume abundance, you move through life with a sense of security, confidence, and expectation that what you desire will come to you. Let's take the example of finances, something that so many people find themselves struggling with. If you assume that money is scarce, that it's hard to earn, or that you will never have enough, then that assumption will become your reality. But if you decide to assume that money is abundant, that it flows easily and freely to you, and that you deserve to receive it, everything in your world will begin to reflect that assumption. Imagine for a moment that you wake up tomorrow and decide that money is no longer an issue in your life. You assume that it is always available to you. You begin to feel the relief and freedom that comes with knowing that you never need to worry about finances again. As you step into this new assumption, you start to notice subtle shifts. Perhaps you receive unexpected opportunities, or you find yourself in situations where money flows more freely than before. You may also notice that your internal attitude toward money has shifted. You no longer feel stressed or anxious about it, but instead feel confident and at peace. When you live from an assumption of abundance, it changes your energy, your vibration. You no longer approach life from a place of fear or desperation. Instead, you approach it from a place of knowing that what you want is already on its way. This knowing is not a vague hope. It is a deep certainty, a conviction that your desired outcome is inevitable. This assumption creates a powerful shift in your consciousness, which in turn creates a shift in your external circumstances. The universe, responding to your new assumption, begins to mirror this belief by bringing you experiences, people, and opportunities that align with the reality you are now assuming. It is important to remember that abundance is not just about money. Abundance is a way of thinking, a way of living, and a way of being. It encompasses all areas of your life, from your relationships to your health, your career, and your creativity. When you assume that there is always enough love, enough joy, enough opportunities, and enough health in the world for you, you will begin to see those very things multiply in your life. When you assume that there is more than enough to go around, you open yourself to the infinite supply of the universe. This assumption transforms every area of your life, because once you truly believe that abundance is your birthright, you will stop limiting yourself and your potential. The key to living from a place of abundance is not to wait for something to happen before you feel abundant. It's to begin feeling abundant now, in the present moment, even before your external circumstances have changed. This is the most powerful form of assumption, living as though your desires are already fulfilled. If you want to manifest more money, for example, start by feeling abundant right now. Begin to feel as though you are already living the life you desire, and see how quickly the world begins to respond. This shift in assumption is profound, and it works because it operates on the law of resonance. When you assume abundance, you are in alignment with the energy of abundance. This resonance sends a clear signal to the universe, and the universe responds by bringing you more of the same. The more you assume abundance, the more you attract it into your life, in all its forms. The truth is, there is no shortage of anything in this world. Everything you desire already exists, waiting for you to assume it into your experience. The only thing that stands between you and the abundance you seek is your own assumptions. Change your assumptions about what is possible, and you will find that your life becomes filled with endless possibilities, opportunities, and blessings. You are worthy of abundance, and when you assume it, the universe will mirror that assumption back to you in ways you could never have imagined. One of the most powerful aspects of the law of assumption is that it operates regardless of how long you've been living in a particular state or condition. No matter how entrenched your present situation may seem, the moment you change your assumptions, you shift the course of your life. There is no past that can dictate your future, no experience so deeply rooted that it can prevent you from changing your reality. Let me explain. We are often bound by our past experiences. We have all faced difficulties, disappointments, and setbacks, and these experiences form the foundation of our assumptions about what is possible. When something goes wrong, we often assume that it will always go wrong. If we've been in a difficult relationship, we assume that love will always be hard to find. If we've struggled with money, we assume that financial freedom is something that is out of our reach. Our past becomes the lens through which we view the present, and in doing so, we limit our potential. But here's the truth. Your past does not determine your future unless you allow it to. When you decide to change your assumptions, you free yourself from the limitations of the past. No matter how long you've been struggling in a certain area of life, the power to change lies within you. The moment you choose to assume a different reality, you create a new path forward. The key here is to realize that your past experiences, while they may have shaped your assumptions up until now, do not define who you are or what you can achieve. Take, for example, someone who has been struggling with their health for years. They may have faced chronic pain, illness, or fatigue, and this ongoing struggle has shaped their assumptions about what is possible for them. They may have assumed that their health will always be poor, or that they are destined to live with these conditions for the rest of their lives. These assumptions become ingrained in their consciousness, and as a result, their reality continues to reflect those beliefs. But the moment this person decides to assume something different, to assume that they are already healthy, vibrant, and full of energy, everything changes. It doesn't matter how long they've been in this state. Once they begin to assume perfect health, their body will respond. Their external reality begins to shift in alignment with their new assumption. This is the power of assumption. It does not matter how long you've been in a particular state, whether it's financial struggle, relationship issues, or health challenges. The moment you change your inner state, you change your outer world. This is not some abstract concept or vague wishful thinking. It is a law as dependable as gravity. The moment you change your assumptions, you change your life. The external world must follow suit, because the outer world is a direct reflection of your inner assumptions. If you have lived with a certain assumption for many years, it may feel like your current reality is permanent. You may feel trapped in a cycle of difficulty, believing that this is simply how life is. But the truth is, your past is not a prison. It's simply the result of what you've assumed up until this point. And just as easily as you have assumed your current circumstances, you can assume new ones. The moment you choose to believe that a different reality is possible, the universe has no choice but to align itself with your new assumption. Let's look at another example. Perhaps you've been in an unfulfilling job for many years. You might have assumed that job satisfaction is rare, or that it's too late for you to change careers. These assumptions have kept you stuck in a job that you dislike, and every day you continue to accept this reality. But the moment you change your assumption, the moment you begin to assume that you are capable of doing work that you love, that your ideal job is out there waiting for you, things begin to change. It may not happen overnight, but the moment you start to assume that you deserve a fulfilling job, that the right opportunities will come your way, your entire approach to life shifts. You begin to see possibilities that were once hidden from you. You may start to meet new people, hear about new opportunities, or find that your own skills and talents become more in demand. The world begins to reflect your new assumption, and soon enough, you are no longer stuck in the same situation. The power of your assumption has unlocked a new reality for you. This is the magic of the law of assumption. It is never too late to change. It doesn't matter how long you've been in a particular state or how much you feel that your current reality defines you. The moment you decide to assume a different reality, that reality begins to materialize. This is where many people get confused. They believe that because their current situation has lasted for so long, they are stuck. They feel like their past experiences are an obstacle that they can never overcome. But the truth is, your assumptions are more powerful than your past. Your past is simply the accumulation of assumptions you have held over time, and your future will be the result of the assumptions you hold today. If you have been living with assumptions of limitation, lack, or struggle, all it takes is a shift in perspective. The moment you decide to assume that a better future is not only possible, but already happening, your world begins to change. You no longer have to live by the limitations of your past. The future is wide open, and it is waiting for you to step into it. The power of assumption lies in its ability to reshape your consciousness. Once you begin to assume a different reality, you are no longer bound by the past. Your assumptions create a new framework, and the world responds accordingly. Whether it's your health, finances, relationships, or career, the moment you shift your assumptions, your reality begins to align with those new beliefs. So no matter how long you've been in your current situation, you have the power to change it. Your past does not define you, and your future is not determined by what has happened before. The only thing that determines your future is the assumptions you hold today. Change them, and you change everything. The truth is that what you assume to be true will eventually reveal itself to you in your outer world. Your inner world, your thoughts, your assumptions, your beliefs, and your feelings form the foundation of your reality. The moment you decide to align your assumptions with your desires, the universe has no choice but to reflect those assumptions back to you. This is the great secret that many are yet to understand. What you assume, you become. Your reality is a mirror of your internal state. If you are constantly assuming that life is difficult, that opportunities are scarce, or that things will never go the way you want them to, then that is exactly what you will continue to experience. But if you begin to assume that life is easy, that opportunities flow to you effortlessly, and that all your desires are already fulfilled, you will begin to see the world reflect that back to you. It is a law as consistent as the rising of the sun. The outer world must conform to your assumptions because the universe operates based on the inner state that you hold. For many, this is a hard truth to grasp because they are so focused on what is happening in the physical world. We are conditioned to believe that the external world dictates our experiences. We see the circumstances in front of us, and we assume that these conditions are permanent, that they define who we are, and that they have the power to control our future. But this is an illusion. The truth is that the external world is malleable, ever-changing, and reflective of your inner assumptions. Let's take an example. Perhaps you find yourself in a situation where you are constantly struggling to make ends meet. Every time you turn around, there is a new financial burden, and you feel like no matter how hard you work, you can't seem to get ahead. This situation can easily lead you to assume that money is hard to come by, that wealth is reserved for a select few, and that you will always struggle with finances. These assumptions, if left unchallenged, will continue to govern your life. You will keep running into the same financial struggles because your assumptions are constantly creating and reinforcing those struggles. But the moment you decide to change your assumptions, everything shifts. You stop assuming that money is scarce or that financial freedom is beyond your reach. Instead, you begin to assume that money flows to you easily, that you are worthy of abundance, and that financial prosperity is already a part of your life. This new assumption may feel foreign at first, especially if you've been living with the opposite belief for years, but the more you embody this new way of thinking, the more your external circumstances begin to change. As you hold the assumption that money is abundant and available to you, you begin to notice opportunities that you had previously overlooked. You may start to attract people who bring new financial opportunities, or you may find that your existing work and efforts start to yield better results. You see, the universe does not respond to what you want, but rather to what you assume. When you assume abundance, the universe aligns itself with that assumption and provides you with the opportunities and resources to bring it to fruition. It's not enough to merely think positive thoughts about money or repeat affirmations. To truly embody this new reality, you must live from the assumption that your desires are already fulfilled. This means feeling the joy and satisfaction of already having the abundance you seek. It means walking through your day as though money is not an issue, as though every need is already taken care of. The more you feel the reality of your new assumptions, the more you become in alignment with them, and the more your reality shifts accordingly. This principle applies not only to finances, but to all areas of your life. The moment you shift your assumptions, everything around you changes. If you assume that love and harmonious relationships are your natural state, you begin to experience relationships that reflect that assumption. If you assume that your health is perfect and that vitality is yours, your body will respond in kind. If you assume that your work is meaningful and that you are valued, you will find yourself in situations that affirm this new assumption. It's important to recognize that the process of assumption is not about waiting for the outer world to change before you change your assumptions. You must change your assumptions first in order to experience a change in the external world. Your assumptions are like seeds that you plant in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. The outer world is the garden that grows from these seeds. The more you nurture the assumption of your desires as already fulfilled, the more the outer world will reflect that assumption. This is the power of your consciousness. The universe is constantly responding to the state of your mind. When you live from the assumption that what you desire is already yours, you send out a powerful signal to the universe, and the universe responds by delivering what you have assumed. It is not a matter of working harder or trying to control the world around you. The key to transformation lies in shifting your internal assumptions to match the reality you wish to experience. The most challenging part for many is to let go of the old assumptions, especially when they have been deeply ingrained over time. We become so accustomed to seeing the world a certain way that it can be difficult to imagine anything different. But remember, the moment you change your assumptions, the world must change with you. This is not a theory or a hopeful idea. It is a universal law. Your assumptions are the foundation upon which your life is built, and they will continue to shape your reality until you choose to shift them. The law of assumption teaches us that we are the creators of our own reality. The world outside of us is not fixed or unchangeable. It is a reflection of the assumptions we hold within. So, if you want to see a change in your circumstances, start by changing your assumptions. Assume that your desires are already fulfilled, that your life is filled with abundance, love, and success. The more you assume it, the more it becomes your reality. The more you live as though it is already so, the more the world will align itself to match your new assumptions. In the end, the power to transform your life lies within you. The external world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting your inner assumptions. Change your assumptions, and the world around you will change to match. The more you live from the assumption that your desires are already fulfilled, the quicker the universe will respond, and the life you dream of will become your reality. One of the most transformative realizations you can have is the understanding that everything in your life is a direct result of what you assume to be true. The law of assumption reveals that your thoughts, beliefs, and feelings are not just passive experiences. They are active forces that shape your reality. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are constantly assuming things about the world, about yourself, and about your future. These assumptions are not random. They are the very foundation of what you experience in the physical world. The key to creating a new reality lies in understanding that your assumptions are the key that unlocks the door to the life you desire. If you want to change your circumstances, if you want to see new opportunities, if you want to attract better relationships, it begins with shifting your assumptions about what is possible for you. Your assumptions create your reality, and if you change them, your reality must change as well. Many people live in a world shaped by the assumptions they've held for years, often without even realizing it. They assume that things will always be difficult, that life will always be a struggle, that success is for others but not for them, that love is something they must chase after. These assumptions become their experience because they are deeply embedded in their subconscious minds. And the subconscious mind, unlike the conscious mind, works tirelessly to make your assumptions a reality. It is not concerned with whether your assumptions are true or false. It simply works to make them manifest. Think about a person who believes that they will never find love. They may have had experiences in the past that reinforce this belief. Perhaps they've been through difficult relationships, or they've never had a relationship that felt fulfilling. Over time, they begin to assume that they are unlovable, that no one will ever truly appreciate them. This assumption becomes the lens through which they view the world. Every time they meet someone, they assume that the relationship will not work out. They may even sabotage potential relationships because they are so deeply convinced that love is not for them. And because they hold this assumption, the universe aligns with it. They continue to meet people who are not right for them, or they may remain in relationships that reinforce the belief that love is elusive. Now imagine that same person shifts their assumption. Instead of believing that love is out of their reach, they begin to assume that love is their natural state. They begin to assume that they are worthy of deep, fulfilling, and harmonious relationships. Every time they meet someone, they expect that it will be the start of a wonderful connection. They assume that love is easy and effortless. And as they shift these assumptions, the universe begins to respond. They start to meet people who reflect this new assumption. Relationships begin to flow more smoothly. The more they assume that love is inevitable and natural for them, the more love begins to show up in their life. The power of assumption is not limited to relationships. It extends to every area of your life. Whether you are seeking financial abundance, health, success, or creativity, it all begins with your assumptions. If you assume that money is hard to come by, that wealth is something you have to work tirelessly for, then you will continue to struggle. But when you begin to assume that money flows freely to you, that abundance is your natural state, your external reality will begin to reflect this new assumption. Opportunities will begin to appear where you once saw only obstacles. You may find that people are more willing to offer you the help you need, or that new avenues for wealth open up with ease. The more you assume abundance, the more it becomes your reality. Likewise, if you assume that you will always be in poor health, that illness and discomfort are a constant part of your life, that assumption will keep you stuck in that state. But if you begin to assume that perfect health is your birthright, that vitality is already within you, your body will begin to reflect this new belief. You may start to feel more energetic, experience fewer aches and pains, and find that your body naturally aligns with your new assumptions of health and well-being. It's important to note that changing your assumptions doesn't mean ignoring the reality of your present situation. It doesn't mean pretending that everything is perfect when it is not. Rather, it means acknowledging your current situation while choosing to assume something different for your future. The power of assumption lies in the ability to choose what you believe, even in the face of current evidence to the contrary. The moment you decide to assume that something better is possible, your internal state begins to shift, and the external world must follow. One of the most profound aspects of the law of assumption is the realization that you are always creating, whether consciously or unconsciously. Every thought, belief, and feeling that you hold is creating your reality. And because so many people are unaware of the power they have over their own minds, they often create a reality that does not align with their true desires. They may spend years assuming that things will never get better, and as a result, they continue to experience the same challenges over and over again. But once you understand that your assumptions are creating your reality, you can begin to consciously choose the assumptions that will lead you to the life you want. You can decide to assume that you are successful, that you are worthy of love, that you are capable of achieving your dreams. And the moment you do, the universe begins to move in response to those assumptions. Changing your assumptions is a process of shifting your consciousness. It's not enough to simply say, I am successful or I am healthy. You must embody the feeling of success, of health, of whatever it is you desire. You must live as though what you desire is already true. This is the essence of assumption, to believe and feel that your desire is already fulfilled. When you live in this state, you align with the energy of your desires, and your external reality shifts to match it. The most important thing to remember is that your assumptions are not set in stone. You have the power to change them at any time. If you've been assuming that life is hard, that success is unattainable, or that you will never find love, you can choose to let go of these assumptions and replace them with ones that align with your desires. The moment you change your assumptions, everything begins to change. The power is in your hands, and it always has been. Your assumptions create your world, and by changing them, you change everything. When you begin to understand the true power of assumption, you realize that there is no limit to the changes you can make in your life. The world is not static, it is fluid and responsive, constantly shifting to reflect the inner state of your consciousness. Every thought, every belief, every assumption that you hold is shaping your experience. And this truth, while empowering, also carries with it great responsibility. For in this moment, you have the ability to change anything in your life by simply shifting your assumptions. Many people, when they first hear about the law of assumption, feel overwhelmed. The idea that they have the power to shape their reality might seem daunting, especially if they are deeply entrenched in a certain way of thinking. But the beauty of the law of assumption is that you do not need to understand everything all at once. You do not need to have all the answers or know exactly how things will unfold. All you need is the willingness to assume a new reality and trust that it will unfold in its own perfect time. The first step in working with this law is to recognize that you are always assuming something. Every moment of every day, your mind is filled with assumptions, whether you are aware of them or not. You might assume that you are capable, or you might assume that you are not. You might assume that life is easy, or you might assume that life is hard. These assumptions are the building blocks of your reality. The difference between those who experience life with ease and those who struggle lies in the assumptions they hold. When you begin to consciously choose your assumptions, you shift the very foundation of your reality. It is not about waiting for things to change before you assume something new. It is about assuming the change first and allowing the external world to follow suit. The universe does not operate on a timeline that matches your physical experience. Time, in the grand scheme of things, is flexible. What matters is the assumption you hold, the belief that you embody, and the feeling you nurture within. To demonstrate this, think about someone who has always assumed that they are unlucky, that things never go their way. This person may have been through a series of unfortunate events and formed the assumption that life is difficult and things will always go wrong. As a result, they continue to experience bad luck, missed opportunities, and setbacks. Every new situation is approached with the expectation that it will lead to disappointment. But the moment this person shifts their assumption, everything begins to change. Instead of assuming that they will fail, they begin to assume that they are lucky, that things always work out in their favor. They begin to assume that opportunities are always within reach and that success is inevitable. And as they hold this new assumption, their reality begins to shift. They start to notice opportunities that they never saw before. They meet people who can help them, and situations unfold in their favor. The universe has no choice but to align with their new assumptions. This is not magic or coincidence. It is the law of assumption in action. The universe is always reflecting your internal state back to you. The thoughts and assumptions you hold are like a signal you send out to the world, and the world responds by giving you more of what you are assuming. It is a mirror that cannot lie. It's important to understand that your assumptions are not tied to the conditions around you. You do not need to wait for the physical world to change before you change your assumptions. In fact, it is the other way around. Your assumptions shape the physical world. If you wait for external conditions to align before you make a change in your assumptions, you are delaying your success. Instead, make the change first. Assume the success, assume the health, assume the love, assume the abundance, and watch as the world begins to mirror your new assumptions. But there is a key to all of this. You must embody the assumption. It is not enough to merely think about what you want. To truly embody the assumption is to feel that it is already true. It is not a passive thought or wishful thinking. It is a living, breathing belief. To embody an assumption means to live as though your desired reality is already here, to think, feel, and act as if your desires are already fulfilled. This is the most important aspect of the law of assumption. It requires you to live in the end result, not in the process or the longing for it. For example, if you want to assume that you are wealthy, it is not enough to simply say, "I am wealthy." You must live as though you are already wealthy. This doesn't mean you need to have all the money you desire right now, but it means adopting the mindset, the feelings, and the actions of someone who is wealthy. You might begin to feel more confident in your decisions. You might start to make choices that align with abundance, and you might start to see opportunities for wealth that you previously overlooked. As you live from the assumption of wealth, your circumstances will gradually shift to match this new way of thinking. This is where many people go wrong. They assume that they must have the physical proof of their desires before they can believe in them. They wait for the external world to change before they change their inner assumptions, but this is not how the law of assumption works. The change starts within you. The moment you assume something to be true, your external reality begins to reflect it. Living from the assumption is not always easy, especially when old assumptions are deeply ingrained. It may take time for the new assumptions to take root, but the key is persistence. You must continually embody the assumption, even if it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Over time, your internal world will shift, and as it does, your external world will begin to reflect the new reality you've created. In the beginning, it might seem as though nothing is changing, but that's only because you are still learning to fully embody the new assumption. The more you focus on the assumption, the more real it becomes, and the more you will see the world change around you. It may not happen immediately, but it will happen. The universe is always in alignment with your inner state, and when you shift your assumptions, you shift your reality. In the end, it all comes down to the assumption that you hold. You are the creator of your reality, and the world around you will conform to the assumptions you live by. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your assumptions are the building blocks of your experience. If you are willing to take full responsibility for your assumptions and shift them in the direction of your desires, you will see the world transform in ways you never thought possible. The key is to live from the assumption that what you desire is already yours and trust that the universe will respond in kind. There is an extraordinary power within you, a power that shapes the very fabric of your reality. Every thought you think, every belief you hold, and every assumption you entertain serves to create your world. The law of assumption is a truth that underpins this reality, that the state of your inner being, the assumptions you hold about yourself and your world, is the very force that brings about the experiences you encounter. This law operates relentlessly, and its nature is such that the world around you is always responding to the assumptions you embody. Your assumptions are not merely passive thoughts. They are active, dynamic forces that draw to you the conditions that correspond to them. When you assume something, whether consciously or unconsciously, you set into motion a series of events that must eventually bring your assumption into manifestation. This is not a theory or a wishful idea. It is the very structure of how your life unfolds. The external world is nothing more than a reflection of your inner assumption. What you believe to be true about yourself, others, and the world around you is mirrored back to you in the physical world. Most people, however, are unaware of the full implications of this truth. They go through life reacting to the world around them, responding to external circumstances, and assuming that the physical world controls their fate. They believe that their circumstances define them. If they are experiencing hardship, they assume they are destined for struggle. If they encounter obstacles, they assume that these obstacles are insurmountable. But this is where the power lies. Your assumptions about the world do not come from the world. They come from you. Take a moment to reflect on the assumptions you hold. What do you assume about your life? What do you assume about your ability to succeed, to find love, to experience happiness and peace? Do you assume that success is difficult, or that it comes only to a few? Do you assume that love is something elusive, that you have to search for it outside of yourself? Do you assume that you are not worthy of abundance or happiness? Whatever assumptions you hold, they are the blueprint of your reality. If you wish to change your life, the key is to change your assumptions. The moment you change your assumptions, your reality begins to shift in response. For instance, consider someone who has always assumed that success is elusive. They may have spent years striving and struggling, but never quite reaching their goals. Perhaps they see success as something that is reserved for others, or they believe that success requires immense effort, sacrifice, or luck. These assumptions create a cycle of struggle. The more they assume that success is difficult, the more they encounter situations that reflect this belief. They try hard, but the rewards are always just out of reach. The law operates by reflecting back the assumptions held in the mind, and so their external world continues to reflect the difficulty and the distance between them and their desires. Now, imagine that person begins to change their assumption. Instead of assuming that success is difficult, they start assuming that success is easy, that opportunities are always available to them, that they are worthy of all that they desire. They begin to assume that success is a natural part of their life. Immediately, their reality begins to shift. They start noticing opportunities they previously overlooked. They begin attracting people who can help them achieve their goals, and their work begins to yield better results. The world around them adjusts to their new assumption, aligning itself with the new belief they hold. This shift in assumption doesn't happen because the external world changes first, but because the internal world changes. When you assume success, abundance, love, or anything else, you are not waiting for something to happen. You are not waiting for evidence from the external world. You are assuming that it is already true, and as you do so, the world must follow suit. The universe is like a mirror, reflecting back the inner state you project. Your assumptions are like the signal you send out to the world, and the world responds by giving you more of what you are assuming. This process, however, requires a deep level of commitment and understanding. It is not enough to simply say, I am successful or I am wealthy in a moment of inspiration. The key is to consistently live from the assumption that your desires are already fulfilled. You must walk, talk, think, and act as if what you want is already yours. To truly embody the assumption is to align your inner world with the outer world you wish to see. This may feel unnatural at first, especially if your current circumstances do not reflect your desires. But the power lies in the feeling that you embody. If you can feel that what you desire is already true, the world will align with that feeling. The importance of living in the end cannot be overstated. Most people get caught up in the how. They want to know how things will work out, how they will get from where they are to where they want to be. But the secret is that you do not need to know the how. The how is not your job. Your job is to live from the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled and the universe will take care of the rest. The external world, guided by the law of assumption, will begin to move in ways you could never have anticipated, bringing the circumstances and people that align with your assumption into your life. It is important to understand that the law of assumption is not about forcing or controlling anything. It is about allowing your inner state to match the reality you wish to experience. You do not need to manipulate situations, control others, or even take drastic action. The action you take will be inspired and will naturally flow from the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. When you assume that success, love, health, or anything else is already yours, the steps you need to take will become clear. The universe will guide you, and opportunities will present themselves in perfect timing. There is a profound peace that comes with understanding this law. Once you realize that your assumptions are the driving force behind your reality, you can let go of worry, doubt, and fear. You no longer need to struggle against the world. Instead, you begin to flow with it. Your assumptions are the key to unlocking the life you desire, and by living in the assumption that your desires are already fulfilled, you become the creator of your reality. The world will adjust to your inner beliefs, and you will find that the life you dream of is already unfolding before your eyes. So remember, what you assume, you become. The life you are living today is the result of the assumptions you held yesterday, and the life you will live tomorrow will be the result of the assumptions you choose today. Take a moment to reflect on the assumptions you hold, and know that with every assumption you change, the universe will align with you. Your power is within, and by assuming the reality you desire, you can shape the world around you to reflect that desire. In conclusion, the power of the law of assumption lies within your ability to shape your reality by changing the assumptions you hold about yourself and the world. Your thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions are not mere fleeting ideas. They are the very forces that create your experiences. When you begin to consciously choose your assumptions, you align your inner world with the reality you wish to create. The world will always respond to the assumptions you embody. And as you live in the assumption that your desires are already fulfilled, your external reality begins to reflect this new state of being. Remember, this process requires consistency, persistence, and faith. It's not about waiting for external circumstances to change before you change your assumptions. It's about understanding that the inner world must shift first. The moment you assume something new, you are setting into motion a transformation that will unfold in perfect harmony with your inner state. Your assumptions are the key to unlocking the life you desire. Whether it's success, love, health, or abundance, everything begins with your beliefs about what is possible for you. When you choose to assume that your desires are already yours, the universe has no choice but to respond in kind. The power lies in your hands, and by embracing this truth, you can create a reality that is aligned with your deepest desires. Your thoughts shape your world. Choose them wisely, and you will witness the incredible transformation that follows.